Russia planned for a short war. Germany is building a military for the kind of war that does not end quickly. That difference is becoming impossible to ignore as Europe moves toward 2026. For most of the post-Cold War era, Germany was treated as NATO's economic giant and military weak point. Wealthy, influential, politically central, but operationally cautious. Russia understood that dynamic well, and it shaped Moscow's assumptions about Europe's ability to sustain pressure, absorb losses, and remain unified once costs rose. That assumption is now breaking. Public reporting through late 2025 shows Germany preparing for a major strengthening of its military posture in 2026. Not symbolically, structurally. Defense spending is set to rise again, supported by both regular budget increases and extraordinary funding mechanisms established after 2022, including the well-known €100 billion Bundeswehr Special Fund. And based on German parliamentary budget discussions and coverage by major European outlets, the 2026 defense line being talked about sits in the low 80s of billions of euros, with figures around 82.7 billion euros often cited, even though the final number still depends on parliamentary approval and political negotiations. But here's the real point. Russia cannot plan around best-case delays. This matters because depth is what Russia consistently underestimates. For years, German defense policy was shaped by restraint, limited readiness, thin ammunition stockpiles, aging equipment kept in service longer than planned, procurement systems optimized for peacetime efficiency rather than wartime urgency. Even after 2014 reforms moved slowly, Moscow noticed, and it built its European planning around that reality. Then Ukraine changed the context. The invasion of Ukraine did not simply trigger a surge in German defense spending. It triggered a strategic rethink. Germany's leadership publicly acknowledged that its post-Cold War military model was no longer fit for the security environment Europe was entering. That moment was widely described as a turning point, but the real shift has been quieter and more consequential. Planning for endurance rather than restraint. By 2026, Germany is expected to operate with defense outlays at record or near record nominal levels, depending on final legislative outcomes and what is counted inside defense. And that's a point German parliamentary analysis and multiple policy summaries keep repeating. The direction is consistent: more spending, more procurement, more readiness, even if the exact total shift in negotiation. Parliamentary processes matter, coalition politics matter, implementation timelines matter. But Russia cannot plan around best-case delays. What makes Germany's 2026 posture different is not a single weapons program. It is the cumulative effect of modernization across the foundations of military power. Heavy ground forces, armored units, supporting vehicles, ammunition production, logistics, readiness, personnel availability, the parts of war that decide whether forces can stay in the field once the initial shock fades. This is where Germany's role inside NATO becomes critical. Germany is not rearming in isolation. Its military reforms are being designed explicitly to integrate with alliance planning, command structures, and sustainment networks. The objective repeatedly described in public reporting is a shift from a historically constrained posture to a deterrence-focused, NATO-aligned force capable of operating at higher readiness for longer periods. That alignment matters because Russia's strategy has long relied on exploiting delays. Delays in political decision-making, delays in mobilization, delays in logistics. Germany's emerging posture reduces those gaps. One of the clearest indicators of this shift is where Germany is putting its money. Publicly discussed plans emphasize large-scale procurement of tanks, armored vehicles, and enabling equipment rather than boutique capabilities. Personnel expansion and new service models have also been floated in policy discussions as ways to improve force availability by the middle of the decade, and reporting in late 2025 described Germany's defense minister pushing to lock in a new military service model by 2026, while openly stressing that it would still need parliamentary approval. These are not glamorous reforms. They are expensive, slow, and politically sensitive. They are also exactly the kind of reforms that make wars harder for Russia to manage. Germany's military in 2026 is not being built to intimidate through speed or spectacle. It is being built to remove the assumption that Europe will run out of ammunition, patience, or cohesion first. That assumption has underpinned Russian planning for decades. Comparisons to other European militaries appear frequently in media and analyst coverage. Germany's projected spending trajectory is often measured against France and other NATO members, with the suggestion that Germany could become Europe's largest conventional force in practical terms if reforms unfold as planned. Those comparisons come with warnings about execution risk, but they also reflect something deeper. Germany is no longer trying to do the minimum required to reassure allies. It is preparing to be indispensable. For Russia, that is a strategic problem, because deterrence is not just about what happens in the first week of a conflict. It is about what remains possible in month 3, month 6, and beyond. Germany's military shift toward 2026 directly targets that timeline. This is not about Germany becoming aggressive. It is about Germany becoming difficult to exhaust. And Russia built its strategy around exhausting Europe first. That is why 2026 matters, and this is only the beginning. For most of the last 20 years, Russia did not fear Germany's military. That wasn't because Moscow thought Germany was incapable of fighting. It was because Moscow believed Germany would hesitate to sustain one. Russian strategic planning consistently assumed that Europe's economic engine would not translate into military endurance. Germany was seen as politically cautious, operationally constrained, and structurally slow. Useful as an economic partner, important as a political actor, but unlikely to anchor a long, grinding confrontation. That belief shaped Russian expectations about NATO cohesion. Russia did not expect Europe to fracture immediately in a crisis. What it expected was erosion, delays, domestic pressure, industrial bottlenecks, declining stockpiles, and above all, reluctance to absorb sustained costs once the initial shock passed. Germany sat at the center of that assumption because Germany's choices would determine how long Europe could realistically keep going. Ukraine shattered that timeline, but did not shatter it overnight. In the early months of the war, Russia still behaved like time was on its side. European militaries emptied existing stockpiles to support Ukraine. Production struggled to keep pace. Political debates flared over energy, inflation, and escalation. From Moscow's perspective, this looked familiar. Pressure applied, cracks expected. Then Germany began doing something Russia did not plan for. It stopped treating defense as a temporary emergency and started treating it as a permanent condition. Before we continue with the video, if you are liking this breakdown of world's military, then consider hitting that subscribe button to be up to date. I post every day. Public reporting through 2023, 2024, and into late 2025 shows German defense planning shifting away from short-term fixes toward long-term force regeneration. Not just high-profile procurements, but sustained investment in ammunition, armored readiness, and logistics capacity, all tied to the post-2022 funding shift and the drive to move faster than the pre-war procurement tempo. And you see that in the way German policy reporting frames it. Less about one-off announcements, more about rebuilding the boring fundamentals that keep a force alive in a long fight. These are areas Russia understands extremely well because they are the areas that decide wars of attrition. Russia has always respected mass. What it underestimated was Germany's willingness to rebuild it. German modernization plans discussed in open sources consistently emphasize heavy ground forces and supporting systems rather than narrow specialization. Tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, engineering units, recovery vehicles, bridging equipment, air defense, and sustainment assets are all part of the conversation. Personnel expansion and new service models have also entered policy debates, with 2026 frequently cited as a key implementation window if legislation proceeds, which is why so much reporting keeps circling back to that year as the moment reforms either become real or get delayed. This is not a return to Cold War force structures. It is something more adapted and more dangerous. Because modern endurance does not look like endless conscription or static formations. It looks like forces that can rotate, resupply, repair, and fight again, without collapsing politically or logistically. Germany's reforms aim directly at that capability, and they are explicitly designed to integrate within NATO rather than operate independently. That integration is where Russia's miscalculation deepens. Russia planned around NATO being slow to scale. Germany's trajectory toward 2026 challenges that assumption by anchoring alliance sustainment in Europe's largest economy. Once Germany commits industrial capacity, logistics infrastructure, and personnel systems to long-term readiness, NATO's ability to absorb pressure changes fundamentally. This brings us to the comparison Russia did not want to make. France has long been Europe's most expeditionary military power. It fields capable forces, nuclear deterrence, and a tradition of overseas operations. But France's model emphasizes agility and reach, not mass endurance. It excels at early action and limited campaigns. Germany's emerging model complements that by emphasizing scale and staying power. Russia has spent decades preparing to blunt the first strike. It is far less comfortable planning against the second year. This is why Germany's potential position as Europe's largest conventional force in practice matters more than headline spending figures. Media and think tank comparisons often note that if Germany's plans unfold as intended, its defense spending and force size could rival or exceed other European powers. But the deeper issue is not ranking. It is function. Germany is positioning itself as the alliance's logistical and industrial backbone. That role is strategically decisive. Wars are not lost because armies run out of courage. They are lost because armies run out of ammunition, spare parts, trained crews, and the ability to replace losses. Russia understands this intimately. Its own doctrine emphasizes grinding pressure precisely because it assumes opponents will exhaust themselves first. Germany's 2026 posture challenges that logic head-on. By investing in readiness and sustainment rather than symbolic capability, Germany removes one of Russia's core leverage points. The assumption that Europe will hesitate once costs rise becomes harder to sustain when Europe's largest economy is structurally prepared to carry those costs. This does not mean Germany is preparing for war. It means Germany is preparing for deterrence that does not collapse under strain. And deterrence that endures is far more dangerous to Russia than deterrence that dazzles briefly and fades. Russia does not need Germany to be aggressive to feel the pressure. It only needs Germany to be reliable. That reliability, projected forward into 2026 and beyond, alters escalation calculations across the continent. It forces Russian planners to consider not just the opening phase of a conflict, but the long middle, where logistics decide outcomes and political fatigue becomes decisive. Germany's shift signals that Europe is no longer planning to blink first. And for a strategy built around outlasting the opponent, that is a fundamental problem. By the time Germany's military posture fully materializes in 2026, the most important change will not be visible on parade grounds or in procurement headlines. It will be visible in how Russia plans. For decades, Russian strategy has relied on a specific belief about Europe, that Europe could respond quickly to a crisis, but not sustain pressure once the cost accumulated. That belief shaped everything from escalation timelines to stockpile assumptions to energy leverage. Russia didn't need Europe to panic, it only needed Europe to tire. Germany's trajectory toward 2026 directly attacks that logic, because deterrence is not just about the ability to strike back, it is about the ability to remain present, to keep units deployed, to keep ammunition flowing, to keep training cycles uninterrupted, to absorb losses without political collapse. Germany's shift toward readiness and endurance transforms deterrence from a short-term signal into a long-term condition. This is where Germany becomes strategically decisive inside NATO. NATO's strength has never been about a single country's arsenal. It has been about aggregation, shared logistics, shared planning, shared burden. Germany's role as Europe's economic core means that when Germany commits to sustained military readiness, the alliance's endurance ceiling rises dramatically. Russia cannot ignore that. Even if final budget figures fluctuate during parliamentary negotiations, the strategic direction is being treated as long-term. And that's how German policy coverage increasingly frames it. Not a one-year spike, but a posture built around the assumption that security competition with Russia is structural, not temporary, which demands forces that can persist without improvisation. This matters because Russia's own military has limits. Russia can generate mass, it can mobilize manpower, it can accept losses that would be politically unacceptable elsewhere. But it struggles with sustained modernization under pressure. Sanctions, industrial constraints, and demographic pressures limit how quickly Russia can regenerate high-quality forces once they are depleted. German planning for 2026 implicitly acknowledges this imbalance. By focusing on readiness, logistics, and industrial capacity, Germany shifts the competition from short-term shock to long-term stamina. That is not the battlefield Russia prefers. It is the battlefield Russia historically loses. There is another effect that often goes unnoticed. Germany's military shift reduces escalation pressure. When a state lacks endurance, it feels pressure to act early, to escalate quickly, to force decisions before weaknesses are exposed. Russia's doctrine has long reflected this dynamic, emphasizing early momentum and coercive signaling. Germany's posture does the opposite. By making sustained defense credible, Germany lowers the incentive for sudden escalation. It stretches timelines. It widens decision space. It makes brinkmanship less effective because the opponent knows time will not automatically erode European resolve. This is why Russia reacts nervously not just to weapons, but to capacity. A tank can be counted, a missile can be tracked, but industrial output, logistics depth, and political commitment are harder to intimidate. Germany's 2026 posture signals that those foundations are being rebuilt deliberately, not reactively. This does not mean Europe is preparing for war. It means Europe is removing the conditions under which war becomes tempting. Germany's role here is central because deterrence is ultimately about credibility. And credibility does not come from rhetoric. It comes from preparation that continues even when headlines fade. Russia understands this dynamic better than most. It knows that once an opponent proves it can sustain effort without collapse, leverage evaporates. Pressure campaigns lose effectiveness. Threats ring hollow. Escalation ladders narrow rather than widen. Germany's military transformation toward 2026 contributes directly to that effect, not by threatening Russia with immediate force, but by signaling something far more unsettling. That Europe is preparing for a long game Russia cannot easily outlast. This is the strategic meaning of Germany's rearmament. It is not a return to militarism. It is not an abandonment of restraint. It is the recognition that restraint without readiness invites pressure, and pressure without endurance invites disaster. Germany is choosing endurance. That choice reshapes Europe's security landscape far more than any single weapon system ever could. Russia still has options, it still has capabilities, it still commands fear, but one of its most reliable advantages is eroding. The assumption that Europe will blink first. By 2026, Germany's military posture is designed to make that assumption obsolete. And when deterrence no longer depends on hope or hesitation, but on visible preparation, the balance shifts quietly and decisively. Not with a bang, but with staying power.